So let's just roll on to the next question.
Yep.
What role does Indonesia play in managing tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, especially with the many interests of major powers, including the U.S.?
Yeah. So, well, of course, the region is also not immune to this geopolitical competition, as I mentioned earlier. And in order to really turn that competition into cooperation, there should be a dialogue.
Yep.
There should be a maintenance of constructive dialogue. And I think that is the strength of ASEAN. Since over 50 years ago, we are the conveners of dialogue. We are having dialogue with many major powers. Basically, all of the permanent security members of the United Nations are the partners of ASEAN. So in this regard, when we see the tension is increasing because of this competition, then Indonesia back in 2019, I believe, came up with this idea to develop a framework or an outlook as the basis for the countries in the region and all of the major powers to develop a dialogue mechanism. And this is then we have this ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. And what is amazing about this is that all of the 10 dialogue partners of ASEAN has endorsed the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Not only that, the European Union, take for example, also introduced their own strategy in the Indo-Pacific, which is also in line with what ASEAN has already been developing. And soon there are many other countries will come out with this, with their strategy, which is also trying to synergize with what Indonesia and ASEAN has already been developing.
Well, you've mentioned that, geopolitical tensions happening specifically around the Indo-Pacific and a major around the world, and Indonesia seems to be, we hear more and more of Indonesia's role actively speaking to, being the media, you could say, the medium of dialogue and creating, being the, encouraging of more and more dialogue to create cooperation. Now, as we know, we are a region that is also affected by current geopolitical issues, as you mentioned before. And just to drag in this very interesting thing, in regards to talk about the current situation between Ukraine and Russia, has Indonesia, we know that, both parties are dialogue partners of Indonesia. Both countries are dialogue partners of Indonesia. And with our G20 presidency, of course, there has been talks about whether one party should be, invited or both parties should be invited. But what is our role specifically in this particular conflict? I hear as the great thing about Indonesia as a neutral state, proclaimed neutral state, has a great big deal in being able to mediate. And President Joko Widodo has also said, of course, violence is condemned, but humanitarian aid is possible. So in regards to these particular geopolitical climate, where does Indonesia stand in regards to dialogue?
Well, in this conflict, Russia is the dialogue partners of ASEAN. Ukraine is not the dialogue partner of ASEAN. Number two, what I would like to also to emphasize here, that Indonesian foreign policy, which is independent and active, it does not necessarily mean neutrality. So independent meaning that Indonesia has its own independency to think about and also to develop its own foreign policy and to pursue it in an active manner. And what is the guiding principle is, of course, the constitutions, where we should also play a role to maintain and also to maintain peace and stability, to maintain world peace. And that is the responsibility of Indonesia to be active in this independent and active foreign policy, despite the fact that this is so far away. But of course, the implication can also be felt, globally. So the main priority for Indonesia, you mentioned earlier about the G20. Of course, G20 is the primary global mechanism on economic and finance. We understand that we are affected by the pandemic. We are in the middle of the economic recovery. So the G20 roles here is very crucial, that the pandemic is not only be overcome, but also we are better prepared in the future, and also economic recovery can also be expedited.
Yes.
But then conflict happen, then of course, there will be impact, there will be consequences in our effort to recover the global economy. But I think Indonesia has responsibility as the president to keep on pursuing together with all of the international community, because billions of people, more than 1.7 billion of people are waiting to have the situation getting better, because for them, this was very crucial.
Right. If we're talking about the G20 that is coming up later in the year, what can Indonesia do to make sure that the countries that are in conflict to come to the G20?
Yeah, well, I think it is very clear that the G20 members are 20 countries, including Russia. But of course, Indonesia has already invited guests of the G20 presidency. And one of the invited guests that has already been extended by President Joko Widodo is President of Ukraine. So then, we extended invitations. And I think the message that we have received so far is that everybody wants this G20 be successful.
Yes.
Everybody wants the Indonesia presidency be successful, because when the G20 presidency successful, meaning this is not the success for Indonesia only, but also the success for the international community.
Yeah, I think it's very important, because there is a lot more to this world than one particular conflict, because as you mentioned before, a lot of people are waiting for the outcome of this particular G20 to be able to, hope more collaborative efforts of recovery can happen specifically after such a pandemic.
That is the reason why the theme of Indonesia presidency is recover together, recover stronger.
Yes.
So no one should be left behind, and we have to be stronger than now. So that is the message. And of course, the other message for Indonesia is on the G20 is, of course, inclusiveness. So developing countries are counting on what will be the decision of the G20. And Indonesia also, President Joko Widodo selected 3 main priorities, which is also the global priorities. We are talking about health, we are talking about energy transition that is going to contribute to combating climate change. You're talking about digital economy, which is also very potential.
Speaking of the potential of digital economy, now this is very interesting, because if we talk about the portion of the digital economy itself, Indonesia is one of the, Indonesia is one of the biggest digital economies, and according to meetings, and we've spoken to our, to our friends on the VOA on the other end, they have also commended us of how different it is in the United States, and the efforts and the investment in the in the digital economy. Do you think perhaps this could, further develop further interests and more collaborative efforts? Because if Indonesia is leading, do you think a lot of countries will look at Indonesia and to want to collaborate with us as a leading entity?
Well, Indonesia is certainly one of the biggest players in Southeast Asia. We have 8 unicorn, we have 2 decacorn, and it will still keep on growing. And we also have the largest startup, one of the largest startup in the world. So with this dynamic and active and innovative and creative young generations, we are very optimistic that we will be able to really utilize that.
Yeah, and speaking of collaboration.
But so during the last trip by Jokowi to the United States, one of the highlights that maybe young people remember is that he met with Elon Musk.
Yes.
So what can we expect in terms of inbound investments to Indonesia? Maybe is it possible that Tesla would do investment here too, maybe?
Well, one of the important messages that Pak Jokowi has already been underlined during that visit, technology. We need to embrace technology. I mean, so the collaboration between with the companies of Elon Musk is about technology, and technology can also here. I think the agenda for Pak Jokowi is also very big in developing a stronger ecosystem on electric mobility, which is Tesla has the as the as the strength here. And we are also talking about space technology. So the most important message is technology is very important for Indonesia and also for the development of Indonesia.
Yes, and we're certainly looking forward to be able to chit-chat with you more, because we know that Indonesia will be doing lots of great things, especially in the next year and in the next all years.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Pak Ngurah, Ambassador Ngurah Swajaya, for being with us.